Welcome to the Deep Dive. You send us the sources, and we distill the core insights to get you truly well-informed, fast. Today, we're doing something a little different.
We're going straight to a foundational text, the MIT Encyclopedia of the Cognitive Sciences, and we're pulling out, well, a single letter.
The letter X, which it turns out is the key to understanding the literal algebraic structure that underpins all of human language.
That's right. Our mission is to demystify one of the most powerful concepts in modern linguistics, X-bar theory.
And if you've ever wondered how your brain, actually takes a string of words and makes sense of them, this is basically the blueprint.
It is. This is all happening within a field called generative syntax.
Which is really a pillar of cognitive science itself. It's the attempt to model the mental machinery that lets us create and understand a basically infinite number of sentences.
Exactly. The whole theme here is structural representation. We're looking for the deep architecture, the universal guidelines the human mind follows, no matter what language you speak.
Okay, so let's get right into that blueprint. We need a clear working definition of X-bar theory before things get too complex.
Simply put, X-bar theory is the specific module, the set of rules within generative syntax that regulates constituent structure.
Constituent structure. You mean how words group together into phrases?
Precisely. It's the system that tells us what a possible syntactic configuration is, what arrangements of words are allowed, and more importantly, how they relate to each other in a hierarchy.
And the sources say this whole structure is built on one absolutely critical foundational principle.
Yes. And that is endocentricity.
Endocentricity.
It's key. All it means is that every single phrase is organized around one central element. We call it the head.
The head. So it has a center.
It has a center, and the entire phrase is just a projection of that head. It's symbolized as x0 or x degrees.
So if you have a phrase like a very fast car, the head is the noun, car.
Exactly. And because the head is a noun, the whole thing becomes a noun phrase. Everything else in there just relates back to that one core word.
So the head is like the star, and the rest of the phrase is its solar system.
That's a perfect analogy. It determines the nature of the entire thing. The whole phrase is its projection.
This brings us to that famous three-level structure. This is where the X and the bar notation comes from. But let's talk about what the levels do.
Okay, let's walk through it. We use X just as a variable, right? It can stand for a noun, a verb, an adjective, anything.
So level 1.
Level 1 is the head, X degrees. The word itself.
Simple enough.
Then, that head combines with what's called its complement. And when they combine, they form the intermediate projection, X, which we call X-bar.
Hold on. A complement, what's its job, functionally?
The complement is the piece that's needed to complete the head's core meaning. So if your head is a verb like eat...
The complement would be the apple.
Right, it's what you eat. It's structurally necessary, and that complement is usually a full phrase itself, a maximal projection.
Got it. So head plus complement gives us X-bar, the intermediate level. What's the final step?
That intermediate projection, the X-bar, then combines with one more piece called the specifier.
And that creates the final biggest unit.
The maximal projection, XP, or sometimes called X double bar. And that is what we really mean when we say noun phrase or verb phrase.
Okay, so what's the specifier doing? If the complement completes the head's meaning, what's the specifier's role?
The specifier often adds extra context. Think of words like the or many in a noun phrase. They sit in the specifier position. Or, very importantly, in the larger sentence, the subject often ends up in a specifier position.
What's so amazing is that this same three-part structure head, complement, specifier applies no matter what kind of word the head is.
Yes. And X can be one of two types of categories.
Which are?
Well, there are the ones everyone knows, the lexical categories. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions, the content words.
But then there's the other type.
The functional categories. These are more abstract. They're the structural nuts and bolts for building sentences.
Okay, things like I for inflection and C for complementizer. These always sound like pure jargon. Can you break them down?
Absolutely. Think of I or inflection as the home for everything related to tense and agreement. It's the part of the structure that puts ed on a verb for past tense.
Or make sure you say he runs instead of he run.
That's it, exactly. It's the engine room for the verb.
And C, the complementizer.
C is even higher up. It's the element that gives the whole sentence its force. It's like an invisible switch that can turn a statement into a question. Or it's a word like that in I think that he left, which embeds one sentence inside another.
And even these abstract functional things follow the same X-bar schema.
The very same. Head, complement, specifier.
which makes the entire system incredibly general. This leads to the idea of percolation.
Right. It just means the properties of the head percolate or travel up the whole structure. If the head is a verb, the X bar is a V bar, and the maximal projection is a VP, a verb phrase. It's what ensures the whole group of words behaves like a verb.
And this is where the real genius of the theory comes in, right? The cross-categorial generalizations.
This was the breakthrough. This is what Chomsky was really trying to capture back in 1970. Older grammars couldn't really explain the deep similarities between, say, a noun phrase and a verb phrase.
They just seem like different things with different rules.
But X-bar theory shows they're built from the same invariant template.
The source gives a really elegant example of this, with the verb describes and the noun description.
Yes, look at the two phrases. The verb phrase describes Nelson, and the noun phrase description of Nelson.
On the surface, one's a VP, one's an NP. Totally different categories.
But look at the internal relationship. The relationship between the head, describes or description, and its object, Nelson, is identical in the deep structure. They're both complements of their respective heads.
So the mind isn't learning thousands of separate rules, it's just applying one unified schema over and over again.
Exactly. And that's a huge deal for explaining how we learn language, which we'll get to later. It dramatically limits the options.
So we have the building blocks. How do we get from a simple VP to a full, complex sentence?
Well, the theory was extended. The sentence itself is now seen as just another projection, an extended projection of the verb, but built around those functional heads we just talked about.
So a sentence isn't some special, unique thing. It's just a very large phrase.
A very large phrase. It's typically dominated by two major functional layers. Sitting right above the verb phrase is the IP, or inflection phrase.
That's where all the tense and agreement stuff lives.
It sits home. And then sitting above the IP is the highest layer,
The CP, or Complementizer phrase.
which, as we said, encodes the sentence's overall purpose or force. Is it a statement? Is it a question?
This layering CP on top, then IP, then the core VP. It seems to create a perfect architecture for handling some really complex stuff like movement.
That's where the action is. The X-bar structure provides these very precise landing sites for things that move around in a sentence. And when something moves, it leaves a little invisible placeholder, a trace, so the grammar remembers where it came from.
Give us a classic example, like asking a question with what.
Okay, take the sentence, what will the boy read? The word what is fundamentally the object of read. It starts its life down in the complement position of the verb phrase.
But we don't say, the boy will read what,
Well, not usually.
right? Instead, that word what undergoes one movement. It's pulled all the way from the end of the sentence to the very beginning.
Where does it land?
It lands in the specifier position of the CP, that highest functional phrase. That's its designated spot for questions.
And it's not just whole phrases that move, right? Individual heads can move too.
Absolutely, that's head movement. In that same question, will the boy read a book? The auxiliary verb will starts down in the inflection position, the I head.
But to make it a question.
It has to move. The head will moves from I up to C, the complementizer head. And that I to C movement is what creates the word order we recognize as a question in English. It's amazing how much structural machinery is working under the surface of a simple question. But this brings up a huge puzzle. If there's a universal blueprint, how does X-bar theory explain the massive cross-linguistic variation in word order?
That is a crucial point. X-bar theory determines the hierarchy, what's in charge of what, but it does not directly determine the linear left-to-right order of words.
That part can vary, like English being subject-verb-object or SVO.
Right, the verb comes before the object.
Yeah.
But in languages like Japanese or West Flemish, it's SOV, subject-object-verb. The verb comes after the object.
So how does the model handle that?
The sources outline two main ways. The first is called parametric variation. It basically says that languages can choose. The deep structure of an English VP is head initial, but the deep structure of a Japanese VP is head final.
So two slightly different blueprints from the start. A parameter is set.
That's one option, but the second, and arguably more influential idea today, is the universal base hypothesis.
Meaning, everyone starts with the exact same blueprint.
Exactly. This hypothesis claims that the underlying base structure is always the same for all human languages. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's always head initial, like English.
But then how do you get an SOV language like Japanese? If the deep structure is SVO, the surface is different.
The answer is more movement. In those languages, the object has to undergo an extra mandatory movement step.
So it starts out after the verb.
But then it's forced to jump leftward over the verb into the specifier position of some higher functional phrase. That extra movement step is what creates the different surface order.
So the variation isn't in the blueprint itself, but in which extra movements a language requires.
Precisely. The core architecture is universal. The variation comes from these small parametric differences in movement rules.
Let's put this in historical context for a moment. This idea didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No, there were precursors. People like Harris in the 1950s had similar ideas, but X-bar was the first truly generative system. It was formalized by Chomsky in 1970 to solve this exact problem of cross-categorial generalizations.
And it was refined pretty quickly.
Very quickly by linguists like Emmons and Jackanoff. And of course, it keeps evolving. There are modern versions like bare phrase structure that try to simplify the system, getting rid of the intermediate X-bar level, for example. The debates continue.
So the specific notation might change, but the core ideas, hierarchy, endocentricity, they remain. So let's get to the big question. For the listener, why does any of this matter for cognitive science? What's the so what?
The so what is everything. X-bar theory isn't just a nice way for linguists to draw trees. It's a profound claim about the human mind. It places powerful restrictions on the kinds of grammar the mind can even entertain.
It narrows the possibilities.
Drastically. And when you assume that this system is part of our innate universal grammar, you suddenly have an explanation for one of the biggest mysteries in psychology.
Which is?
The rapidity and uniformity of child language acquisition.
How kids learn language so fast and so perfectly without being explicitly taught all these rules.
Exactly. They don't have to learn a million different rules for every kind of phrase. Their brains already have this constrained universal algebraic framework built in. All they have to do is listen to the data and set a few parameters, like word order. X-bar theory provides the innate scaffolding.
That's an incredibly powerful takeaway. So we've spent this deep dive exploring this algebraic framework for the language module of the mind. It shows that all this complexity is built from these simple, repeating, hierarchical structures built around a single head.
It's the constant, hidden architecture beneath the chaos of everyday speech.
And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to consider.
We've talked exclusively about syntax, the structure of sentences, but this X-bar format has also been explored as a way to understand morphology, the internal structure of words themselves.
So applying the same rules to how words are built.
Right. And this raises a fascinating question for you. If the same mechanisms that build phrases are also building words, does that suggest a single, unified, fractal architecture for all of linguistic knowledge? A system that uses the same principles at every single scale, from the smallest piece of a word to the largest, most complex sentence.
A truly fractal grammar, a beautiful cognitive image to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of language.
It was a pleasure. We hope you feel much more informed about the X in cognitive science.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.